We love our country, we respect our flag, and we always proudly stand for the national anthem. We always will stand for the national anthem.
As you watch this next segment, please remember not one of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles took a knee during any of their games last season. Nonetheless, at what was supposed to be an Eagles celebration, President Trump followed through today on his promise to hold instead a ceremony where we would hear loudly and proudly played the national anthem. This came after the president's surprise decision last night canceling this event, hosting the Super Bowl champion Eagles, claiming they disagreed with the custom of standing for the national anthem. This morning, the White House blamed the cancellation on the football team, saying, quote, "The vast majority of the Eagles team decided to abandon their fans." Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins responded to the president, quote, "It's hard to meet people who don't agree with you and to have tough conversations about uncomfortable race-related issues and how to make positive change. Instead, the decision was made to lie and paint the picture that these players are anti-America, anti-flag, and anti-military." Philadelphia's Mayor Jim Kenney dismissed Trump's decision in an interview today.
Donald Trump is meaningless to this whole process. It's meaningless. He's meaningless to the city and the city's success. He tries at every chance he gets to tear cities down, and eventually he'll be gone one way or the other, and we'll move on.
At a briefing this afternoon, the White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders repeatedly blamed the Eagles for what she called a political stunt. Our own Peter Alexander asked Sanders about the president's seemingly inconsistent views on free speech these days.
So I guess my question is simple. So if the White House supports the baker's right of free speech, why doesn't the White House support the players' right to free speech?
The president doesn't think that this is an issue simply of free speech. He thinks it's about respecting the men and women of our military. It's about respecting our national anthem, and it's about standing out of pride for that.
Jill Colvin and Jonathan Lemire of the Associated Press write of Trump's decision to disinvite the Eagles, quote, "It was another sign that Trump intends to continue to fan a culture war he has stoked and which he has long believed is a winning issue with his base. Trump has long fixated on the NFL national anthem controversy and was pleased when last month's announcement of the league's new policy returned it to the news. The president told one confidant Monday that he aimed to periodically revive the anthem issue in the months ahead, believing its return to the headlines would help Republicans as the midterm elections approached." Let's talk about this now, and with us to do that, Charlie Sykes, author and longtime conservative radio host who is now contributing editor and podcast host for the Weekly Standard. We should also mention he's from Wisconsin. I seem to remember they have a football team there. And Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root. Jason, welcome back to the broadcast. I'd like to begin with you. My Sundays took an awful turn with a horrendous head coaching choice by my beloved New York Giants a few years ago. We're in recovery now, but all of us who love Sundays in season have been forced to let politics enter even that day. And what do you see is happening to the process now? How far have we gotten from the reason of the protest in the first place?
I think the protests, Brian, the protests have always been clear. Colin Kaepernick, everyone involved has said, look, these protests are about police brutality and institutional racism. The players have said that consistently, that is the motivation behind them taking a knee or any kind of protest that they engaged in. And the president of the United States and certain members of the right have simply refused to listen to it. It's not an issue of they just disagree. They've simply said, we refuse to listen to what you're saying is the motivation behind your protest. And the problem, the sort of larger cultural problem, Brian, that I've seen with this is it turns Sundays, which used to be a fun day. I'm a Seahawks fan, a former Eagles fan. It used to taken a fun day and turned it into a political wedge issue. Now you have people who literally will shame you if you want to watch football or complain because players are doing this, that, the other. The president has taken something sacred on a Sunday and turned it into a problem just so that he can achieve a certain amount of points with racial invective and class warfare. And it's shameful.
And to Charlie, in a state where Sunday really is close to a football version of a religious holiday, yes, as issues go, this is a shiny object. This is not the summit talks that are about to go on with North Korea. It's not the Russia investigation. It is football after all. But think of the collateral damage this week, Charlie. Football players have been accused of lacking patriotism. They've been accused of being anti-military.
Yeah, well, first of all, we got to note that this is a lie, that, in fact, none of the players did take a knee. But this has two advantages for Donald Trump. It's a distraction, and it is a target to focus the grievance of his base on. And this has been his playbook all along. And he thinks about how this plays in red America. And he believes that if he pits the flag, the military, if he talks about these things against these pampered players, he's going to win. And even if you have this collateral damage, and Jason is absolutely right, by the way, Wisconsin's a very divided political state, but the one thing we all believe in is football and the Green Bay Packers. And, Donald Trump touching this has taken his willingness to use this kind of divisive politics to score points. He's taken it into our Sundays. But look, this is something he thinks he can win on this issue. He thinks that the culture, he's comfortable with the culture war issues. He thinks that it resonates with his base. You're going to see a lot more. And by the way, memo to the NFL and anybody else who is targeted in a Donald Trump culture war, you notice that appeasement does not work. Gracious surrender does not get you what you want. He sees that as a sign of weakness, and he doubles down.
Right.
Didn't work for Joseph P. Kennedy in the years before World War II either. Hey, Jason, I want to show you something. The setup for this is brief. LeBron has spoken.
I mean, I know no matter who wins this series, no one wants to invite anyway, so it won't be Golden State or Cleveland going.
So it won't be Golden State or Cleveland going to the White House. Here's another norm that falls, though. I mean, these White House ceremonies can be fun. It's great for the fan base. They bring the trophy. And now we know that whoever wins in the NBA, sorry.
Right. Well, honestly, Brian, maybe J.R. Smith will go. He'll forget that they weren't supposed to go to the White House this time. I mean, at the core issue here, it's that the president has demonstrated that there is nothing in American culture that he will not use to his advantage, regardless of what the consequences might be. This is deeper than just lying about players. This is deeper than just raising sort of racial bugaboos of pampered black athletes who don't deserve what they have. There were programs and community service activities that these players were supposed to do in Washington, D.C. that got canceled. All of these things resonate when the president decides, I don't care what I have to do to people as long as I can try to make a political point. And I'll also say this, and I think this is really important. What also we saw with the Eagles this year, it runs against a consistent narrative from the right that protest is somehow bad for the bottom line or the antithesis of winning. You had politically active players on this team all season, and they still beat the New England Patriots, who are sort of a pro-Trump team if we were to take to believe what Bill Belichick believes. So, again, he really, really dislikes this team, not just for the racial component, not because he thinks it's going to help him with his base, but because the Eagles represent everything that the president has tried to fight against, which is politically active black men, white men working together to solve structural issues in this country and still winning.
Jason, I know neither Charlie nor I hate that you pointed that out about the Patriots. Anyway, Charlie, last word goes to you. To your last point, that this is aimed at the base, and they will kind of ride along on this. This is a big calculation for everything Jason just said, for what we're losing, for another norm that has fallen.
Yeah, and there is a certain amount of risk, though, for Donald Trump, because as Jason pointed out, look, a lot of these players do give back to the community. They're very, very popular. And so, this is not just taking on, any sort of random target. This is an institution that is deeply ingrained in American culture. And I do think there is an element of risk. But in terms of the norms, we use that term, over and over and over again. The willingness of this president to expand the bounds of his politics to corrupt every aspect of American life, to pit Americans against one another in areas in which they often go to get away from these kinds of divisions. This is going to be a legacy, and unfortunately, it's going to leave a mark on our culture long after Donald Trump is gone.
Well, gentlemen, here's hoping that all three of our quarterbacks remain healthy going into this next season. I wish ours was 10 years younger. I just said that publicly. Charlie Sykes, Jason Johnson, gentlemen, thank you both so much. Another